And we're live. Hello, everybody. Hey, look who I got with me today. I'm going to point correctly. You have to point the other way, you know. Um, welcome, welcome to you, John. John of New. It's so nice to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for being with us.
I am so honored to be here. I've had a lovely talk with you beforehand, but now I'm really looking forward to talking to not only you but your guests as well. This is going to be fun.
That's great. That's great. So I'm going to say hello to some folks in a few minutes, but I'm just wanted to get started. I went over and watched some of John's videos. He's got a lot of videos. I thought I had a lot of videos, but no, no, no.
And all of
Um,
them in the last 2 years.
uh-huh. Yep.
1,100 videos. Yeah.
That's amazing. I have like 800, but that's 1100. So that you must do more than one a day sometimes.
I did. I have, yes.
Okay.
Early on, I did several a day. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yes, and you've got quite a great number of subscribers. So congratulations. That's
Well,
wonderful too.
well, thank
Yeah.
you very much. It's
Um,
growing quickly. I don't. Actually, I think you're catching up to me soon. I just crossed 9,000.
that's fabulous.
So
That's
yeah,
fabulous.
you're
Good for
right
you.
behind me though. Don't
Yeah,
fret.
well, about halfway there, but that's okay. I have a great group of people that are here, and I know they'll have some great questions for you, and probably a lot of them already know who you are. Do you also work with Kim Copeland? Have you worked with Kim?
I haven't worked with Kim Copeland. I've worked a lot with Kim Carey.
Oh, you've
Uh,
worked with. Okay, I've met her.
yeah,
Okay.
I've been on her channel a couple of times, and
Oh,
she actually kicked me back into the spiritual world
she.
because I was out
Yeah.
of it for about 10 years,
Okay.
and
Okay.
she literally said, you need to come on and be interviewed with me, and then next thing you know, it was like everything changed
Oh,
overnight.
wow.
Incredible.
So I went to Sedona with Linda G and Kim Carey and so on, and had a great time and met Kim. She's beautiful. What a beautiful soul she is.
Inside
Yeah.
and out, inside and
Yeah.
out. Everything about her
Very
is just
much so.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. So before we start, John and I just both realized that we both have worked as professors. John as a full-time theater professor. When did you retire?
Oh, let me. I only worked as a theater professor for 8 years.
Oh, for eight. Okay.
Eight
Okay.
years,
All
and it
right.
was I had come out of other work, and I went into. I was working with Oberlin for 8 years, but what happened was I, I was doing my spiritual work prior to that, and then I
Uh-huh.
became a college professor, and then when everything got changed and upside down in the world, um,
Uh-huh.
everything changed.
That changed where your focus was. I
Changed everything.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But we were just talking about the fact that he's well known for his direction for Shakespeare. And we were talking about how Shakespeare's going to be illegal in Florida and how crazy that all is. So just,
Absolute insanity.
it is. It is. It's been
Absolutely.
around forever and ever, even in the Victorian times.
Right.
Who,
Exactly.
who,
And when inside of Shakespeare, there's so many beautiful things,
uh-huh.
and to negate it is just terrible. I think.
It is terrible. It is. Yeah. And it's just it's what it is fear, like you said, you did mention it's all fear, the whole thing. Let's control, and we're fearful, so let's control and then bring that fear onto others, so they'll be fearful and they'll follow and they'll do what we want them to do, and it's
Right.
quite scary. Yeah,
Yeah.
quite scary.
Fear has been a manipulative tool of power for so long,
It has.
and it's in not only in governments but in religions and everything else. And
Right.
I mean, even
Right.
to jump real quick to the rapture, it
Hmm.
didn't exist until 1830, and it
Oh.
was it's not in the Bible,
Okay, I know it isn't. Yeah,
right?
you're right. Yeah.
In 1830, Minister Darby heard the dream of a Scottish boy and made up the rapture, and it became the coolest fear tool for the evangelists to
Of
use.
course it did, and brought in the money. Reminds me of the Canterbury Tales when we had the Pardoner and we had all these other, and they were real people in those times that would, if you pay me $5, then your soul is safe. That
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a lot of those ancient beliefs are still with us today. We don't even realize it. Someone sneezes, we say, God bless you. The reason
Yeah.
we say God bless you is because in the medieval times, they thought when you sneezed, you opened your soul to the devil.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
the original quote was, may God bless you and the devil miss you.
Okay.
And so, but we still
Well,
say it today.
I know.
It's
Well, it's the
crazy.
same way with Ring Around the Rosie.
Right.
I mean, that
Exactly.
Yeah, that was supposed to stave off the bubonic. Was it the bubonic plague?
Bubonic plague. And the reason there was a
Bubonic.
pocket full of posies is to
Right.
bring the
That will
stench down.
save you.
It was to bring the stench down. Great. Well,
Yeah.
here's one more little historical tidbit.
Sure.
When comedians says, "Are you pulling?" or somebody says, "Are you pulling my leg?" Do you know where that comes from?
No, I don't know that one.
When they used to hang people on the gallows, sometimes their neck wouldn't break.
Oh, so they'd have to pull on their leg to kill
So they
them.
had leg
Oh.
pullers, and that's where the and we still use that today. It's amazing.
Well, and actually Shakespeare. I remember looking up all these sayings that came from Shakespeare,
Yeah,
and we never had before Shakespeare, and how he, and there's just millions of them. Uh,
Millions. And there's a
yeah,
great
yeah.
video on YouTube, Kenneth Brownell, talking
Uh-huh.
about all of the phrases from Shakespeare that we still use today. So it's an
Yeah,
amazing video.
yeah, yeah. And who would know? And probably even the unwoke people know what they are because
Right? Imagine
oh my God.
that. Make a wake
Well,
with your wokeness.
that's right. That's right. Let's say hello to a few folks and then we're going to go in and talk about some of John's background and so on and so forth. So, hi, Kate. It's good to have you here, Dream Detective, and Craig Dixon. Mary Thornberry, another Ohioan.
Oh,
P.
Ohio.
Major
Hello, Ohio in the
San.
house.
Ohio's in the house. And Butterflies Are Free. Starhawk. Lisa. And Pierrette here from Canada. And we have Tammy Jackson. I'm sorry you have a head cold.
No.
Oh my goodness, that's why you've only had 2 hours of sleep, dear. See if you can get yourself propped up, sort of, not laying flat. That may help you breathing. Although this is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not a doctor. Carol Buds is here. Rossi. Who else came in? Juanita. And hi, Rossi. Yes, GOP wants to dumb down the masses. What a better way to control it. Yep. Hi, KK. Spirit made me do it. Oh, I love that name.
Oh,
Spirit made me do it.
that
That's
is my
good.
that is my good friend Marcy. Spirit made me do.
Is it
Hello,
really?
Marcy. Yeah, hi, Marcy.
Oh, that's awesome. I love your name. It's perfect. Wow. Lisa and Sally and uh, Peaceful, Easy Feeling. Every time I see that one, I want to start singing. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So yes, I've been following John. I hadn't listened to a lot of his shows for a while because I've been busy, but today I pulled some up and I just really just enjoy it. And you've got this. There was one I watched from a couple of maybe a month ago. I don't know. You were outside. You were
Yeah.
talking at your picnic table or something. I don't know. And it just was so. It reminded me of. I guess it reminded me of how Jesus sat in the Garden of Gethsemane,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talked to his people.
You know,
So
my favorite memory from my past life regressions was sitting on the side of a road, eating figs and laughing with he and his wife. And we were just
Mary Magdalene.
yeah, Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
He called her Ishti, which is Aramaic for wife. And
Okay.
they just giggled and laughed and loved all over each other, and we were just munching figs. And that's my favorite memory of all of the regression
Of
stuff is
course.
that
And
one moment.
don't they say that if you're asked to look back on your life and a moment that you really loved, that it's always the simple ones
Yeah,
that, the just that kind of a day, not,
yeah,
not your wedding day necessarily or whatever, but just, oh, I sat outside and the sun was shining and the birds were coming around. Just, yeah. So that makes sense to me, John.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a great expression of not only that moment, but of who he was, too. So
Sure.
that to
Sure.
me is great.
And so you've answered one of my questions. I have always thought that he did marry Mary Magdalene, but yeah, it's nice to know that he did because everybody thought of him as being this only high-crested being and not a person as
Right.
well. And he was a person.
He was a person, and in my past life memories, no choirs ever sang when he entered a room. Right? It was like he was a guy, he was a man, but
Right.
he was a man who came to understand his relationship with God, source, consciousness, yada yada, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
I call it God because my mom was Catholic and she'd kick my butt if she was here with me, right? If I
Oh, of
didn't
course
say
you would.
God,
Yes. What's wrong with you? You can't do that. Yeah.
right? Actually, that woman right there was probably the most influential spiritual person in my life because when I turned 18, she literally said to me, "Spirituality is a personal journey. Go find what you believe."
Oh, that's beautiful.
And she
Yeah.
had her master's degree in liturgy and was head of liturgical doctrine at our Catholic Church.
Oh, wow.
And she still
So
said
her
that.
open-mindedness exceeded her ability to only stay in one mind thought. Oh, she's very open-minded. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
And we didn't
Yeah.
find out that she was actually living her truth so beautifully until after she died. Then we started hearing all of these things that she did for other people that we never knew
Yeah.
she did.
Yeah.
And she was literally just living in, and she, I'll tell you a very quick funny story. She
Yeah.
went after my regressions, there was a book about me, all kinds of stuff. But she goes to her Irish Catholic priest, and he was a
Uh-huh.
red hair, parted down the middle, wire rimmed glasses Irish Catholic priest.
Yeah.
And she says, "Father, I'm really concerned about my son. He thinks he's a reincarnated apostle." And this is what the Irish Catholic priest did. He went, "Don't discount it. It might be true." So
Oh,
I was like,
that's so cute.
how
Yeah,
beautiful, huh?
it
How beautiful
is.
that somebody
It
who
is.
devoted their life to Catholicism can
Mhm.
still be open enough to
Can
see.
still be open to it. It's very interesting because I do see a lot of people in here that say they were what is the word? Converted
Recovering
Catholic,
Catholics.
or yeah, recovering. That's right,
Yeah.
recovering.
I'm
But
currently writing a book right now called The Recovering Catholic's Guide to Spirituality.
oh, that's awesome! I
Yeah.
think you'll do really well selling that because I think there's so many of them out there. I mean, I'm sort of a recovering Christian, let's say,
Same thing.
um,
Yeah.
but I embrace the Buddha. The Buddha
Beautiful.
is my
Beautiful.
guy. And I found out when I was going to graduate school in the 90s, everything opened up for me. I mean, I had already read a lot of books and done a lot of work, but when I was matching up the history of things and the people that were part of that history, it just spoke to me. And I remember saying to some people who were very against what I had to say, about Buddha, which I wasn't proselytizing. I was
Right.
like, I had a little picture of him or something.
Right.
And they would say, well, he's not my guy. Jesus is the only one. And I said, no, Jesus was just a man. He was a wonderful teacher. He was one of the best teachers we've ever had. And that's all that Buddha was, too.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, no, Jesus was not a teacher. He was not just a teacher.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about that experience you had there was, when I came out with my story, I had loving remarks from Buddhists and Hindus and
Oh, sure.
Muslims and
Yeah.
all of the people who called me a heretic and all those things. They were all Christians,
Hmm.
and none of that belief that they carry even came into existence until the year 325 at the Nicene Council. Because prior to that, he was not the Son of God. He was either a teacher, a prophet, or a fraud, depending on your perspective.
Right. Who you were
But
listening to. Yeah.
it
Hmm.
wasn't until Constantine said he's the Son of God that suddenly everybody else was wrong. And
Right.
so it's really interesting to me.
It is very interesting. And then, of course, they took out some of the books of the Bible, the Book of Thomas, and a few others that
About
indicated that
45 books out of the Bible. Out of
okay,
the
45 of them
Yeah,
that pretty much talked about reincarnation and other things. Isn't that right?
yeah, but one of them slipped through. One of them slipped through in the Bible. He says, "Who do they say that I am?" And they say, "Some say you're Elijah or some other prophet returned." And he says, "No, I tell you, he has come already, and you have shunned him," referring to John the Baptist.
Okay.
And th-
Yeah.
that's biblical. How
That's
can they not?
biblical.
How can they
Yeah.
say it's not reincarnation? Because they
Right.
believed he could return and be Jesus of Nazareth or John the Baptist.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, so cause I think it's the Gnostics. Is it the Gnostic Gospels
Yeah,
those are the ones
the
that have
Gnostic,
taken
the
it?
Nag Hammadi, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, and yeah,
Yes. And of course, I love the Dead Sea Scrolls. Just the fact that they have been able to find, the young boy found them. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you've seen, Netflix has a new show that's called Unknown, and they found a pyramid in
Mm.
Egypt, of course, underneath the ground, and they found people that had been buried there for longer than they had found before,
Oh,
with beautiful papyrus scrolls that were saved.
wonderful.
And they ended up having the Egyptian Book of the Dead, in hieroglyphics and so forth and so on. So
Right.
every other type of community that was prior to the one that was sort of taken over by the Christians
Right.
looked at reincarnation, looked at
Right.
all of that.
Right.
We have more than one chance, you know.
Right. Right. In
Yeah.
Hinduism, they think of reincarnation like a wagon wheel, that we
Hmm.
are the center hub, and each spoke of the wheel is a different life, and on the outer rim, that is the understanding of it all.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a
Yeah,
a beautiful, beautiful
it
perspective.
really is beautiful. It is.
Yeah.
Um, so Tammy says her hubby has been reading the Book of Philip. That must be one of them, huh?
It
Okay.
is absolutely
All
one of
right.
the, it's actually, I have a friend of mine who I met him through a friend of mine who is the Atira Hatton. She was one of these ARE certified psychics. She
Uh-huh.
introduced us because he remembered under regression, he remembered the life of Philip. And
Okay.
and
Okay.
he comes to me and he says, "I have to thank you." I go, "Why?" He says, "Because Book of John is the only place Philip is mentioned in the Bible." And I said, "And never forget it."
And you owe me. Yeah, you owe me.
He and I have traveled to Egypt for a month, Israel, Greece, Jordan, Peru. We've been all over the world together. He and I.
Okay. Wow.
Beautiful.
Amazing. So Kate wants to know, do you have information about the Book of Mary? And actually, Tammy says her husband's read Mary and Thomas. Is it the book of the Gnostic Gospels that you have to read, or are there separate ones that will?
They're separate. It doesn't come in one book. And actually,
Okay.
interestingly enough, if I have two channels, my other channel is literally called The Recovering Catholic, and I have been doing in-depth studies of the Gnostic texts individually.
Oh,
And
good.
one of them
Okay.
is the Gospel of Mary. Now, let me tell you something interesting about the Gospel of Mary. It's Mary telling her story of a vision of Jeshua after the crucifixion,
Uh
and
huh.
getting very interesting stuff. And she actually at one point she says to him, "Am I seeing this in my soul or in my spirit?" And he says, "Neither. You're seeing this in your mind." And so he had this whole expression this way, which was beautiful. But what was interesting about that book was towards the end of that book, she refers to herself as a man. And the reason she did that was historically, she was saying, "I'm equal with a man," because they were in a patriarchal society. To say she was a man meant she had equality.
Right.
And then at the end of that gospel, Peter and one other disciple start saying, "Well, why should we listen to you? You're a woman. But, enough of
Right.
knocking you down." And then, and then Levi stood up and said, "Hey, you be quiet. You're always bitter." And he loved her more than us, and obviously she would know. And so Levi totally defends her in the end.
Yeah.
But you could see the time,
Hmm.
the patriarchal time. Women were subjugated,
Yeah.
and and here's this guy Levi standing up for her, and she's just telling her truth and declaring herself an equal at the same time. It's a
Oh,
beautiful, beautiful text. It's a beautiful text.
that's wonderful. Well, and we know it didn't work out that way for a lot of people after her, even such as Hypatia of Alexandria, who they ended up murdering and killing, and in the streets, and the way that some of the things flip flopped with between pagan and Christian in the Greek world as
Right,
well, and in Alexandria with
right.
all of the burning of the scrolls. It was just
Terrible.
horrible.
And what's very interesting to me is when Constantine did the Nicene Council and they declared him the Son of God.
Hmm.
Constantine started negating what was in those Gnostic texts, and one of the things he negated was they asked Joshua who should they go to after Joshua was gone,
Uh huh.
and he says, "Go to my brother James the Just." He
Okay.
does not say Peter. Now, the
True.
reason the reason Peter became the first pope and the head of the church is because what Jeshua did at the end of his life was he sent all of his disciples to different parts of the world, or different the region really. That was what
Right.
he would call the world, to
Hmm.
teach this lesson of everyone's divinity. And so he was spread everybody out. Peter was the one who was sent to Rome.
Uh-huh.
So for Rome to be the seat of Christianity, Peter had to be the one that Jesus said was the important one. And as you're diving through the Gnostic text, you start to find these additions where they
Hmm.
start plugging Peter in different spots that were not actually, it makes no sense why he's even in some of these stories. And it's literally, I think they're just adapted texts that they tried to figure out how to make them
Oh,
work.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
thought maybe they were just trying to make it more palatable for people who wouldn't have believed in anybody else.
right,
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
what's so interesting also is when you look at the oldest compiled copy of the Bible,
Hmm.
it's the Codex Sinaiticus. And
Hmm.
when you look at that text, every page, every page of that text has multiple edits on it,
Oh,
and
I bet.
not just for grammar, for
Uh-huh.
context. They were changing the book right there in real time. It was crazy.
Well, yeah. And weren't they writing it from many, many decades after?
Right.
Yeah.
The oldest the oldest book in the New Testament is a letter from Paul, and it's supposedly 50 years after the crucifixion.
Okay.
And Paul is a guy who never met Jeshua in life. He only knew him as from a vision on the road to Damascus. But
Okay.
here's the unique thing about Paul. Paul was the only one of apostles, and he declared himself an apostle. He called himself the apostle of the Gentiles.
Okay.
But he he's the one who created all the rules and all the laws and all the things. He was the only one who was a Roman citizen.
Okay.
And so he was literally giving us all the rules and laws and everything that we have to follow. And
Hmm.
when you start digging into Paul's rules, one of his rules is a very, very interesting one. He says, it's okay to beat your slave so long as the slave doesn't die because your slave is property. Right? Doesn't sound too loving to me.
It doesn't sound loving, but doesn't it sound like some people that we had here in the United States that had slaves at the time? It really does. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, he's the one. He's the one who said women aren't allowed in the church with the men.
Hmm.
He's the one who created the fact that women couldn't become priests or any of that because
Okay.
of his because he was a Pharisee and those were the beliefs of the Pharisees.
Uh, yeah. Um, he, yeah, the rules, and then there are some rules that sort of. I remember reading and learning about Islam as well. I took a whole class in that back in the 90s, and
Yeah.
and it was fascinating because they said that pretty much he and Jesus knew each other. Now I don't know if you feel that that might be true.
I don't know if they knew each other, but it's a very interesting thing. You have the Abrahamic religions, and
Hmm.
Judaism is of Abraham,
Right.
right? Jeshua was supposedly the fulfillment of Abraham, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
But Muhammad was the prophet after Jeshua, and they actually in the Quran it says, "You shall not deify Muhammad as
Right.
the Christians have deified Isa, the son of Mary." But then you go past that, and you go to the Baha'i faith, and they
Uh-huh.
believe Baha'u'llah was the next after Muhammad. So you've got
Okay.
this long Abrahamic tradition,
Yep. Yep.
but everyone sort of says different things. But when you dive into each one of them, you can
Hmm.
find core loving principles,
Hmm.
but then you see the mind of man wrapping their fear around
Wrapping
it.
up, absolutely.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
thank you. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
There's always that. It would be, and with the Bible, I always remember telling some of my students that, it would be as though you and I were giving a firsthand account of the Civil War or the
Right,
Revolutionary War.
right.
At this time, we weren't there. We don't know what happened.
Right, right. I
Yeah,
like I liken it to you don't ask a caveman how to scuba dive.
that's right. That's right. Yes.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would you take his advice? He doesn't know
Right.
what a tank is, right?
No, he doesn't. No,
And so
he's too sequestered. He hasn't gone under the water.
right, right, right. And if you look, I've got the Quran, I've got the book,
Uh-huh.
the Bhagavad
Yep.
Gita. All this is here.
Uh-huh.
I tell everybody who wants to study this, put on your love goggles and read them.
Yes,
Read, read,
absolutely.
read the loving parts, and the parts that are fearful, that's of man.
Yep.
And
Yep.
when you look at
Because you
the
can find the same words based just in a different way in all of them.
exactly what
Yeah.
and what you're putting into the experience, you're going to get back. Buddha said, "What you think, you become. You create your world." Krishna said, "You're the
Right.
culmination of your thought." Joshua said, "As a man thinketh, so is he." They're all saying that what you're putting into the world, you're getting back in
Yeah.
some form. It's just a matter of then. Well, and even Shakespeare, there's nothing good nor bad, but thinking makes it so,
That's
right?
correct.
Right? And
And
actually,
DeSantis thinks so.
a better Shakespeare one, is in Hamlet. King Claudius says, "Words without thoughts never to heaven go." If we don't have our belief in there
No,
and our
right. Yeah.
and you can believe in love and you can believe in fear, but it really comes down to you making the choice.
Absolutely. And that's why there's so many loving atheists out there, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
They follow the golden rule and they're
Yeah.
good to other people. And
And I think if you have found a loving life, then you have found God, whether you're an atheist or not,
that's
right?
right. You just
Right.
don't
I
know what
think
you just call it different. You just call
right.
it
It's just a
different.
different. It's
Yeah.
just a different
Yeah.
experience. And in the Old Testament, the story of Adam and Eve, right?
Hmm.
Everybody always forgets the moral of that story. They 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 ate from the tree of knowledge. They
Yep.
got kicked out of paradise. They got in
Correct.
their heads and out of their hearts, because paradise is a feeling. and
Absolutely.
and it's a
Hmm.
matter of be the loving essence of that you want to be, and it'll come back to you. But when you start thinking, well, I have to eat this way, and I've got to pray this way, and I've got to go this way, or
Yes.
I'll burn in hell, and these are all the trappings of the mind,
Oh
taking you
yeah.
away from you being the
Yeah.
creator.
And we were talking earlier on another show many times about how people they are afraid to die because they think that they will burn in hell for whatever because their religion has told them they will.
Yeah.
And so, but heaven and hell are of your own making.
Yeah, can I
I
can
mean,
I can I give a historical perspective
you
on
may
that?
certainly do that.
Oh, check this out. When I found this out, this was amazing. The word that became hell was Gehenna. And
Okay.
Gehenna, at the time of the writing of the books, was the place on the outskirts of Jerusalem where they would burn their trash. So Gehenna, if you were bad, you went and burned in Gehenna, right?
Oh, for
right,
heaven's
right. Then
sake.
the other one that's interesting is Satan comes from
Hmm.
Satanus, and Satanus means temptation.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the horned beast who's the opposite of God. There is
Right.
no opposite of God in
No.
this regard. But so when you think about the concept of Jeshua's life, he was becoming a spiritual rock star.
Yeah.
And my first memory of him in my regression was people running down the beach to see him because he was
Oh,
there.
sure. Yeah.
And and so he was getting offers to become a very powerful person. And in the
Hmm.
Bible, it talks about him going into the desert and wrestling with Satan, right?
Hmm.
He was
Hmm.
in the desert wrestling his own temptations
Sure.
to take this power and move it, into this
Yeah.
other experience. And obviously he won. All right. He
Yeah.
didn't take it. So
Yeah. He did.
fascinating
Absolutely.
to me.
So let's talk a little bit about what brought you to your regression. I know you said you saw angels as a child, and you saw other, I guess, entities, or you were able to communicate with your guides.
Well, it's a really interesting story. I don't, my childhood to me was all very normal, and it was filled in later, right,
Okay.
by my
Yep.
brothers and sisters. They were like, yeah, this happened, that. I was like, really? I had no clue, right? What happened to me was I had a couple little weird spiritual things that I was very aware of. I had what the Hindus would have called a spontaneous Kundalini rising,
Oh wow.
and the next night I had an out of body experience,
Oh
which was
sure.
amazing, right?
Hmm.
So I'm now going through this whole study, trying to figure out what I believe, and I ran into the book, The Celestine Prophecy, which kind of put me in another
Sure.
direction, and
Sure. Uh-huh.
conversations with God and all that.
Hmm.
But I was at a party, and this lady started staring at me from across the room, and she walks over and she says, "I know what you're doing. You're looking at my aura," because I was,
Uh-huh.
right? And I said, "Maybe." She says, "You walked with Jesus, right?" And my response was the thing that really hit me. I said, "Yeah, I did that." And
And you felt it.
I just knew it, right?
You knew it.
And
Yeah.
then, being a good Catholic altar boy, I
Right.
was like, "Get away from me, lady! You're crazy. I don't want anything to do with you. What is that? What am I thinking? I'm crazy. I don't want to be the guy who thinks he's Napoleon. All those things, right?"
Uh-huh.
So then I go to the Renaissance Festival in Maryland because I was a Renaissance Festival performer.
Me
And
too.
yeah, oh, were you? Oh, wow, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. We'll have
Uh-huh.
to talk about that later.
Yeah, later. Yeah. Yeah.
So I did a show called Hack and Slash for many, many years,
Okay.
and I was sitting there talking to a friend of mine who was a professional mime, but it was off time, so she was able to talk.
Oh, well, that's good. You didn't have to figure it out.
And we're in the middle of a conversation about how's your life, what's going on. She stops the conversation. She says, you were John the Beloved, right? And I'm like, 19 different psychics kept telling me the same thing.
Oh, my Lord.
I called up a Tara
Wow.
Hatton to book a session because I was like, all these other ladies had told me I want to blindly call somebody and see what they say. So I called up
Yes.
to set up an appointment. She answers the phone. She's, "Oh my God, you're John the Beloved." Right? So I had all these
Oh,
19 psychics telling me this, right? And I'm still
wow.
being the doubting Thomas.
Sure, of course.
you know, I,
Sure
I
you
don't
weren't
know.
Thomas. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. I wasn't Thomas, right? I was
Okay.
being the doubter, definitely, right?
Right.
And I said, "Oh, please, just give me a direct sign, not all these psychics."
Right. Right.
And somebody comes in and hands me a book. It's on the other table over. The original book is on the other table over there. It was a little tiny paperback book by Jess Stern, and it was called Edgar Casey on the Millennium. And I just start reading the book, and I get to page 32, and I had to stop and read a passage over and over again. It literally says, "John the Beloved will again be named John."
And
And
that was your birth name.
that was my birth
Okay.
name, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so I said, "Okay, I'm going to go get a regression because
Yeah.
now I've got this sign and I've had
Yeah.
these psychics tell me." So I go to a certified hypnotherapist who does regressions. And I'm saying
Mhm.
that very specifically. There's a lot of people who say they do regressions, but get somebody really credentialed because there is a way of
Right.
them accidentally putting belief into you as they're doing that.
I
You want to make sure
understand.
that
Yeah.
they're very clear.
Sure.
And this lady was amazing in Virginia.
Mhm.
She didn't guide anything. She just basically dropped me to places and let me go, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I open my eyes and I'm standing on a beach. And I look down and I'm standing on it's more like rocky beach. And my
Mhm.
arms are bare and my legs are bare. And I'm like, oh, obviously I'm not an apostle because they all wore robes, right? Right? No way, ha ha ha! Proved it wrong, right? I found out later after doing research what I was wearing is called a fisher's coat. It was the thing that they would wear then when they'd fished, so that when they fell off the boat, the
They don't
robes
want to
didn't
get
suck
all
them
wet.
under. Right,
Yeah.
right. So I did. There were several other things in
Sure.
there that I researched as well. But I
Uh-huh.
see these people running by me down the beach. And I end up going over to this crowd and I kind of like work my way into the crowd. And as I get deeper in this crowd, I can feel this feeling, this
Mhm.
sensation. And I'm like,
Mhm.
and I start to lose my breath. And the crowd kind of parts and I see this guy standing directly in front of me. I painted this picture in 2000.
Okay. Awesome.
I see him and I can feel him and you can hear me. I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about it.
Yep. Yeah. Me
I'm like,
too.
I'm like, oh my God, you could feel him. You could hear me say this in the regression. I could feel him. And he looks at me like he's known me his entire life. He
Mhm.
smiles, he tilts his head a little bit, he walks over, he raises his hand up, and he sets it right on top of my chest. And I had what you would consider a near death experience in my regression. I went out of body, I was in pure essence of love.
Uh-huh.
Everything was pure white. I was one with everything around me.
Mhm.
And I'm moaning. And to be honest, I have the regression, and I chopped out about 7 or 8 minutes of me moaning because it kind of sounded weird. But so the regressionist gets lost, and she says, are you with him or are you him?"
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
response was, "I am within him," right?
Okay.
Which was
Okay.
amazing. And then
Yeah.
she goes, "What's the next most important moment?" And the next most important moment was me falling into my fears and my anxieties and my separation. And I had a
Okay.
complete understanding that being here in the physical is to feel separate and alone so that we can know what that love feels like. And we are here to experience these it's like, as Kim Carey described it perfectly, it's like
Hmm.
being in a pure white room and you're pure white and everything is pure white. You could never know what pure white looked like without knowing what red or green or blue or any of the other colors were.
Okay. That's
So,
wonderful. Yeah.
great example.
Yeah. It is.
So we come to this experience to feel our separation and to feel so that we can come to know that love of God, consciousness, yada yada, more
Hmm.
fully,
Yeah.
right? And so when we cross over and we have that near death experience going back, the reason we
Hmm.
have life review is because we're experiencing not only from our perspective, but from everybody's whose life we've
From the
touched.
others. Right.
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 Now,
Hmm.
one of the things you're talking about, the people being afraid of death,
Hmm.
in the Psalms, it says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Everyone forgets that it's not the valley of death, it's the valley of the shadow of death.
Ah.
We're down here in an illusion that where we can die, but life is eternal because we know life is eternal because people go out of body all the time and people have near death experiences all the time. They leave, so we know
Uh-huh.
that life is eternal. It's down here in this physical place of experience where we're having this shadow of death, this thing that looms over us, that is our
It's
fears.
all illusion.
It's all illusion. And I love talking about Buddha. The secret to enlightenment is the eradication of fear. That was
Yeah.
a Buddha quote. Sufism, which is a brand of Islam,
Yeah.
Sufism, they say God is on one side of a veil and we're on the other side of the veil, and our life is the struggle against the veil, and the veil is our fear.
Right.
And so it comes down to, are you love or are you fear? Because fear is just the illusion of not being loved in some form.
That's right. That's right.
And so,
I remember one of the things when I was doing all this learning about all these religions was that the mystical parts of every religion are almost all exactly the same.
it's true. It's
Yeah.
true. I call them universal truths.
Uh huh. Yeah.
You can find
Yeah.
like the thoughts being creative. You talk about kindness. The Dalai Lama said, "My religion is simple. My religion
Oh
is
yes.
kindness." Prophet Muhammad said, "He who knows not kindness has no faith."
Yep.
So it comes down to being
Yeah.
loving, being kind, and putting
That's
that
right.
into the world.
And
Yeah,
and being empathic. Absolutely.
yeah, and
Uh,
and I think as our veil is getting thinner, and I really think humanity is shifting into a much more beautiful place right now. And I think
mhm.
the reason we're having all the struggles that you're seeing on the news is not because they are winning; it's because they're losing.
Right. No, and
And,
we talked about that a little bit, and I agree with you 100%.
yeah,
If you wouldn't be trying so hard if you weren't if
right.
you were doing okay.
Yeah, and
If you were winning.
think about
Yeah.
this too. When if now I'm not going to talk politics because that's not
That's okay.
my thing.
That's all
But
right.
when you look at your political parties or whoever's competing for your vote, look at what they're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
not who they're trying to knock down. The
Absolutely.
one side's trying to get health care and all these things, and the other one side is
Hmm.
saying we're going to stop everything they're doing.
Right.
You ask them, well, what are you going to do? And they say we're going to stop them.
Right.
They don't have anything, and so
No, they don't. Yeah.
it's a
You're
matter of
absolutely no,
realizing.
you are.
Yeah,
You're right. And it's pretty much always been that way.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Laurie says it's so fascinating that he is here during this time on Earth. It's giving my mind and heart so much comfort, and that is kind of the same way that I'm feeling. Mary says, I feel that there are many from that time here on Earth. Can that be a question? Are many souls here right now that were there from that
Well,
time?
it's a great question because it's something that I struggle with and I tell you why I struggle with it.
Yeah.
I have met over 30 people who believe they're Mary Magdalene. I've met over 30
Oh,
Peters. I've met over 30 Pauls.
sure.
I've met
Most people want to be somebody popular,
right,
you know.
but it would be completely hypocritical of me to say they're wrong, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And when it comes to reincarnation, I believe we're one with God. So, as the Hindus would say, the consciousness of God is the Sit, and we are the Sit Sat Ki, the individual sparks of consciousness within the one consciousness.
Hmm.
And so, I don't know whether I'm just tapping into the oneness of God, and that's particular consciousness within the oneness of God, and
Hmm.
whether other people can tap into that or not. And but what I will say is this: it doesn't matter who anybody was; it only matters who you are in
Right.
the here and
What
now.
their message is too. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
see.
really, the Bible says, whatever you ask in God's name is granted. And Moses said, God's name is I am.
Right.
Not I
Yes.
will be, not I was. I am,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. I
And
am.
so
That's what I am that I am.
I
That's his
and that's
name. Yeah.
Popeye too. I am's
Yeah,
what I
I
am's.
know.
Right? Right.
That's right. And that's exactly what I'm thinking, Alex. It could be fragments of the same, but I'm also thinking, they say that in quantum physics, and I'm not a scientist, so this is just my understanding of what I've heard, that there are parallel universes and we have parallel lives in those universes. And it's very possible that those people have that reincarnative spark in that universe or this universe. It's something to think about
Yeah,
anyway.
it's interesting because I have an interesting parallel universe kind of story. The way
Okay.
I kind of look at it, I kind of look at it from a different perspective.
Okay.
So I went to a restaurant with a guy, and as we walked into the restaurant, the guy says, "I hate this place," and I said, "I love this place. What are you talking about?" And
Uh-huh.
we walked in, we sat down. The waitress came over. For her first thing she said was, "I'm sorry, I'm having a bad day, and it's going to reflect in your service."
Oh dear.
Right? Guy across from me was instantly angry.
Sure.
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
So I turned to her and I said, "I'm so sorry you're having that kind of day. Why don't you sit down? I'll get you some dinner. I'll take care of the rest of your tables." And she started laughing. I started laughing.
Right.
We started flirting, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
This guy and I both ordered our meals. Our salads came. Mine, I swear to God, it looks like she went out to the garden and handpicked each vegetable. I mean, this was the most beautiful salad I've ever seen. His showed up. It was the core of the iceberg lettuce cut into 4 chunks.
Oh my God.
Right. We both ordered steaks. My steak came. I swear the cook called my mom at home to find out how I liked it because it was perfect. He cut into his rare steak, and the center was frozen.
Oh God.
Right.
Yep.
We
Yep.
each have our own universe. We're creating our own
We
universe all the
absolutely we
time,
get what we expect.
and we get
Wayne
what we
Dyer said
expect.
that. When he was walking the beach at Maui, somebody asked him how he loved living there, and he asked them, "Well, how do you like where you live?" And the first person said they hated it. It was this, it was that, it was. Then that's what you're going to get here, he said.
It's
and
exactly
and
right.
then another person asked, and they loved where they lived, and that's what you're going to get here because you get what you expect, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
In the year
Wow.
2000, I traveled for a month through Egypt, and
Uh-huh.
everybody treated me like I was a member of the family. And I ended up meeting some of the most famous archaeologists. And I was in the pyramids of Giza before anybody else alone because I made friends with the stable guys the day before. And
Uh-huh.
I had an amazing experience. And towards the end of the trip, I climbed Mount Sinai. Now, it's
Uh-huh.
about a 4 hour climb. You start at 1 o'clock in the morning. 2 o'clock in the
Oh,
morning, I hear my name being yelled. It was the manager of the hotel bringing me a coat because he thought it'd be cold at the top. He had come up an hour and a half to give me this coat. Next day, I ran into another American. He says, "Hey, you American?" I said, "Yeah, I sure am. How about you?" He says, "Yeah, I'm American too." He said, "Have you been having problems since you've been here?" I said,
oh
"No, not
no.
at all." He says, "Everywhere I go, people want to fight me." Five
Oh
minutes
my.
later, I wanted to kick the guy's butt
I bet you did.
because that's what
Yeah.
he was. That's what
He
he
was
was creating.
projecting anger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that is we have our own universe. We create our
We
own
do.
experience, and
Thank you. Yes.
perception is reality. If you perceive your world as nasty, you are going to see it as nasty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Oh, this is so nice. Thank you, Chitra.
Oh,
They
Chitra! I love Chitra. She's one of my favorite people of all the world.
That's awesome. Thank you for coming over and being here with us today. Yeah. Um, let's see. I want to mention that you do private sessions. People can book a private session with you. You get their name and you sort of go into your psychic sense, which he doesn't call psychic really, but
I
he
call it just
taps
opening
into
up
the
to the
universe.
oneness. Yeah.
Yeah, tap into the oneness and give you a reading. And he also does some readings, I believe, no, questions from the chat. So
Yeah.
I can probably take a few questions from the chat if you have them. I just know that I might not be able to answer all of them, but John's got so many things going on his channel that, I've seen here a lot of people have just subscribed to both your channels because the Recovering Catholics are running.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know what? I'll tell you what. The recovering Catholic thing is big because there's so many people who have been held back by the religion
Oh,
and by
yeah.
religion in general, really. And
Uh-huh.
what's so interesting to me is I started that second channel, and I had like almost 3,000 people in 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
just jumping over and saying, I get this. This is who I am. And I don't
Um,
mean people just from my own channel.
no,
People
I
can,
know what you're saying. There is a feeling of connectedness, and there's a feeling of peace when you
yeah.
talk, John.
Oh, well, thank you.
You have that ability. No, you
Well,
really do.
well, thank you.
And so I, uh, I can attest to why people would do that, because I feel similarly. I wanted to bring up because two things actually. The first thing was, have you ever heard of what Jonathan Haidt wrote, The Righteous Mind? He wrote a book about bibliocentric and Christ-centric differences in Christianity.
Hmm.
In other words, one person, they act more as Christ would have chosen, or
Right.
as Yeshua would have chosen. And the others, everything is the Bible, the Bible, the Bible.
Right.
They go only from Biblio. And so I think we've sort of encountered that question here today. So maybe it's not,
Right.
maybe it's a moot question, but
Well, there's also when people go, they think of the Bible as an infallible object.
uh-huh.
And I had a man one time I was talking to, and I asked him, I said, so let me ask you a question. I said, so all these Gnostic texts, all these things that didn't make it in the Bible, are they as valid as the Bible itself? And
Uh-huh.
he said, no. I go, and
Okay.
why is that? He says, quote unquote, I have to believe that God's hand was in the choosing of the books.
Okay.
For him to be that, he has to believe it because the religion says he has to believe it.
Yeah. Right.
And so it comes back to they many people will argue with me about infallibility of the Bible. But then when
Mm-hmm.
I say, well, okay, so the book of John says God is love, and the Old Testament says that God sent two bears to kill 42 children because they made fun of a bald man. Where's the difference there? And
I
don't get me wrong,
understand.
as a bald man, I'm okay with it. Right?
No.
I'm teasing.
Well, I mean, it's the same. It's the same thing with, when we talk about the Holocaust and other things.
Right.
How could a loving God do that? You can't do that.
Right.
It's just, we
Right.
all have our contracts. We all come with our contracts,
Right.
and we all
Somebody just
decide.
asked me the other day in my chat. They asked me, if God is love, how can such bad things happen?
Right.
And I said, well, God is a loving God, and God made, in all of the text, God made you to promise that what you think you become, you create your world, and whatever you ask in God's name is granted, and God's name is I am. So he
Mm-hmm.
didn't say, whatever you ask in God's name is granted, if it's good for you. He said, and so there is a collective consciousness out there of
Right.
people
Right.
who are doing certain things. I mean, I can look out my window right now, and there's a beautiful brick rancher across the street.
Uh-huh.
And about a month ago, they put a blue roof on that ugly house. Right? Now, did I create that blue roof on that house? I don't
No.
think so. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Well, it's
the new
free will.
persons
Yeah.
free will, right? Exactly.
Yeah. You're
And
right,
and
Sally. Force belief removes fear. Free will. Yeah.
yeah. And so
Absolutely.
and it does come down to you are the creator of your experience. The Bible says, "Ye are gods.
Mm-hmm.
You are
Mm-hmm. That's
creating."
right. That's right. What I can do, you can also do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Greater
absolutely.
works than I have done, you shall also do. Yeah.
So before we move into a few questions, the Essenes. So what do you want to tell me about the Essenes?
Okay.
And I'm open. I'm very
Yeah.
open-minded.
I believe because and the only reason I believe this is because I have a memory of this.
Uh-huh.
I have a distinct memory from a regression of avoiding the Essenes of Qumran because they wanted him to step into the role of Messiah and he wouldn't do it.
Okay.
And the reason they wanted him to step into the role of Messiah is because they wanted him to become king so that he could raise an army to fight Rome.
Okay.
And we know that historically the first armed conflict against Rome was led by an Essene named John, not this John, different John, right?
Right.
So he was, I've heard stories about him being raised in the Essenes and I don't necessarily know whether he was ever within their community or not. I do know
Mhm.
that if he had been, they definitely parted ways because we
Yeah.
avoided them because they wanted him to really take on that role and he wouldn't do it.
Okay. So you and I have to we have to honor that, and say that we'll walk side by side. I don't want to make anybody any higher than they already are. If I in fact was a Nassim, because that's what I've been told.
Right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know
Yeah.
what? It doesn't. Whoever you were doesn't really matter. It's who you are now,
Right. I understand.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jeshua was a man, and
Uh-huh.
not only a man, he was a funny man,
Yeah.
and a loving man, and a caring man, and no matter, he wouldn't have taken us to war.
No.
And
True.
now, on another end of it, one of the memories I have from my regression was seeing him on the cross. And
Oh
if
wow.
if you ever heard my regression, and if you go to my channel, there's a video called Two Moments from My Regression. You'll hear the
Okay.
moment I meet him and the moment I see him on the cross.
Oh,
And you'll hear me screaming and yelling and wailing, and I can't listen to it without crying myself, still to
I
this
bet
day,
because you were there. Yeah.
because I was there.
Absolutely.
And so they did put the King of the Jews over his head, but that was to stamp down anybody trying to put power over Rome, because the factions of the time were really pushing him to be this king,
Hmm.
and he was like, "No, I'm not that." In fact, if you watch Jesus Christ Superstar, he says, "Are you a
Hmm.
king? It's you that say I am. I look for truth and find that I get damned." Right? So
Right.
it
Yep.
comes back to that space, and I'm
Yeah.
off on a tangent. Now I'm into musicals.
No,
No,
it's
that's a bad
okay. But
bad place to go.
as a theater professor, you love Jesus Christ. I thought Jesus Christ Superstar was awesome.
Oh,
Did you feel that
I
way?
loved it. I
Okay.
loved it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I've had a
Yeah.
chance to play a couple different roles in that play myself
Oh,
personally.
wonderful.
But I
Yeah.
never got to play the big guy, but I did get to play Judas.
I was going to ask you if you played Herod. Yeah.
I did not play
Yeah.
hair. Back in the
Didn't.
day, I had a first tenor voice. I had long, flowing
Oh.
Fabio
Oh,
hair.
did you really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
You had
yeah.
hair, beautiful hair.
I did, and then one day I looked in the mirror and Ben Franklin looked back at me, so I cut it all off.
I get it. No, my son is went bald at 22, so I totally get it. It's all
Well,
genetic. It's
tell
genetic.
your son, God does not cover perfect heads.
Will do.
All
Will
right.
do. All right. So let me pull up some questions here.
Yeah,
I'm
great.
going to start with Christie's, because she's saying so many of us have abilities, have a Catholic background. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's really interesting. A lot of people with Catholic backgrounds, in the way of breaking out of their Catholic backgrounds, open themselves up in a very fast way. I believe we all have all the abilities, but
Right.
it's a matter of where we focus on. I just did a video the other day on John Edward,
Uh
and
huh.
people are like, mediumship. He is very focused on mediumship, and so his focus, his belief is there, and so he's a very clear medium,
Right.
right? And
Right.
somebody else may be clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient. It's a matter of we as creators where we place our focus. But when you have been held in by fear and anxiety and told you're
Right.
not worthy, I mean, the Amazing Grace does say you're a wretch, right? Save a
Yes.
wretch like me. When you break free of that, you open yourself up to possibilities. And I believe, honestly, when you break free like that, you get so open that you will start to see your own divinity in
Sure.
all of its many ways.
That's wonderful. Peaceful Easy Feeling says she was grateful for her Catholic upbringing, just for the lesson of faith. And,
Yeah.
I think we should be grateful for every experience and every lesson that we've learned in life. So that's a
Yeah.
beautiful, that's
I
a
totally
beautiful.
believe that you can find God/love in anything. I have a
Yeah.
friend of mine who's a big follower of the law of one material.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
it doesn't ring
Hmm.
true for me,
Uh huh.
but he is so loving, so caring, so wonderful. He's found God.
Right.
He's found the source. It doesn't really matter, as the Bible says. In my Father's house there are many
That's
mansions.
right. That's right. Everybody can, it doesn't matter where you're coming from.
Right,
It's all, it's all pretty much the same.
right,
It brings us to where it is that we're going to go on our journey. And
precisely.
absolutely. Oh, that's so nice. I'm glad. Peaceful Easy Feeling. Sandy says, did you see your animals when you went to heaven?
Oh, well, did I see my animals when I went to heaven? My animal, I had one animal.
Okay.
His name was Odin. He was a 110-pound Rottweiler. Um, I raised him from 2 weeks old. I did bottle feeding. I carried him,
Oh my.
and he ended up being 12 when we had to put him down for bone cancer.
Hmm.
But he still visits me in dreams,
Does
and
he?
and the dream is always the same. I go to someone's house. I walk into their house. I turn to my side, and my dog is there, and I know it's him. And I'm like, you're still alive? And he runs over and he licks all over me. He plays all over me, and then I take him with me when I leave. And it's visceral, and I'm goosebumping
He's always with you.
again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Abs-
the oneness of
abs-
God. They're all there. I had a friend of mine who was a sword swallower. Yes, I had cool friends. His name was Johnny Fox, and he passed away of cancer. And about a month before he died, he called me, and I missed the call, and I never got a chance to call him back.
Mhm.
And he died.
Uh-huh.
And I had this very visceral dream of being at backstage at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Festival, and I see him come in the room on the other side of the room, and he's holding a sword that I made because I used to make swords as well.
Oh, good.
And he starts walking towards me with a big grin on his face. And he comes up and he hugs me. And I said, I'm so sorry I didn't call you back. He says, I still love you. And it was this very visceral hug. And I know that that was him.
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
that because if you think about this world that we live in, everything you're seeing is atomic energy, including the eyes you're looking at it with.
Absolutely.
All we are is
Absolutely.
our consciousness. And
Yeah,
within
yeah.
that one consciousness is all of these individual
All of
sparks.
these individuals. So we have a dream class, not a class, a show on Wednesday nights, either on my channel or Dream Detective Kate's channel. And a lot of people will come in and tell us very similar things. And we're saying, well, that was really was a visitation. That wasn't necessarily a dream. There are things that are dreams that
Right.
are given to us to
Yeah.
work things
When you
out. But
feel it
yeah,
viscerally though,
yes,
that's really the sign.
you know it's a visitation.
I just did a video that came out today, I believe,
Oh,
about somebody was asking what Joshua would say about what is the sign that you're around.
I did
And
watch that one. Uh-huh.
and
Yep.
he said the response is so interesting because I think he would say that what sign do you want? Because you get to choose your illusion. And
Right.
so
Yes.
in that video I talked about seeing the red cardinal that comes over and sits out my window. Well,
Right.
I know that my mom collected cardinals. So I see that red cardinal, and that's a sign to me my mom is
A lot of
visiting.
people are say, for me, it's a hummingbird from my brother. My girlfriend also sees cardinals and she believes it's her mother. So I get it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
It's whatever you
And
think,
and we
what
get to
symbol.
choose the sign.
Yeah. Yep. I think we can. And once we do, we're sort of locked in because then we keep getting them. That's awesome.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah. My friend Holly said she wanted to get a sign of a dime, getting a dime from her friend.
Right.
She put that out 20 some odd years ago,
Uh-huh.
right? Well, no, it could have been 20. It couldn't have been 20. It could have been like 10ish, 8, 10ish years ago.
Okay.
I invited her to my house for Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
And all day long I'm cooking, I'm making pies, I'm doing all this stuff. And she shows up, I have all the food out on the table. She goes over, she pulls her chair out. There's a dime on her chair, right? I don't use change. I use only my card. I don't like
Okay.
change,
Yep.
right?
Yep. I get it. Yeah.
But she found this dime on her chair. And it really comes down to realizing that what you believe about your present moment, you're getting.
Yeah. I agree.
And to the nth degree. A couple
Yeah.
weeks ago, I was going on a vacation and I couldn't find the Allen key that goes with my camera. And I was walking around my house going, I can't find my Allen key. I can't find my Allen key. Kynan, have you seen my Allen key? And then I'm like, what am I doing? I don't can't anything. I
Right.
am I am finding my
Right.
Allen key.
Right.
I looked to my right. It was on the shelf at eye level beside me. Right?
As soon as you made that awareness connection, there it was. Yeah.
Whatever you believe about your present moment
Much.
is what is happening.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you can get conscious about that creation, oh my God, does your world change?
Oh, of course. Well, you
Yeah.
could call on St. Anthony if it was really bad, right?
Right. I I sit in that feeling of I go grocery shopping and I exhale and I release all my fears and anxieties because we know that when we hold fear in our body, we're holding
Yeah,
air in.
we are.
And
We're
so
not
this
we're not inspiring or aspiring to do anything.
right,
Yes.
right. And there's a reason for that because we store
Uh-huh.
air in our lungs so we have a reserve to run further and faster,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
And when we choose to exhale, and as an actor, as you would know this,
Uh-huh.
when you forget your lines on stage, you're trained to exhale and relax all your muscles.
That's right.
And all
That's
those lines come running right back in your
They
head,
come
right?
running back. One
Yeah.
of my friends, they didn't come running back, and he just merely stood up and in character and said, I have to go to the bathroom, and he ran off the stage. And it worked. It worked. It was okay. It worked,
Great,
because
great.
he didn't break character. He was
Right,
cool
right.
with that. I have a question about your rendition of Yeshua, um, which I totally believe, and he looks as to be an Arabic, olive skinned, dark eyes.
He is
Yeah.
dark, dark.
Okay.
It's one of the
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
controversial things I've ever done in my
I know.
life. Actually,
I know.
he
Yeah.
was very dark skinned. He had light eyes. He had light eyes.
Uh huh.
If I could,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I can get it off the stand right
Oh,
now.
he didn't have brown eyes then.
No, and I
Okay.
was like, that can't be true. Until I was in Washington D.C. in the Smithsonian, and I was and talking to this guy, and I come to find out he was an anthropologist, and I
Uh-huh.
was like, so let me ask you a question. Middle East, blue eyes. Does it ever happen? He says, oh, well, he says all the time. He says, in fact, if blue eyes can happen anywhere at any given time. He says, in Indonesia, there's a whole tribe of dark-skinned natives with pure blue eyes.
Oh wow.
He says you can
Okay.
find blue eyes pretty much anywhere, and he says, and probably back then, in those time periods, it was probably more prevalent because of the ozone being different.
Okay.
And
That makes
so,
perfect sense, doesn't it?
yeah, so
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
well, because that was one of those things that I was doubting, because I was like, it
Uh-huh.
makes absolutely no sense to me. And let me see if I can get this.
Oh wow.
So you see the blue,
I do. I
yeah,
do.
and they're
Yeah.
piercing,
They are
you know,
piercing.
and
Beautiful
that.
job, John.
Oh
Beautiful
well,
job.
I'm a
Yeah.
much better painter now. That was done 20 years ago.
Uh-huh. No, but it's a good rendition. It's good to know, because there's so many things that we have that are misnomers about him and about his ancestry and about Mary Magdalene, about all these people. Um, Mary brings this up. She says ancient scrolls reveal that Jesus spent 17 years in India and Tibet from 13 to 29. He was both a student and a teacher of Buddhist and Hindu holy men. Is that true?
Though John was never with him during that time,
Correct.
I completely believe that that is true.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do the deep dive studies and you go to India, like I did,
Yep.
you find out about Sri Isa. Sri
Okay.
Isa is a Hindu holy man, and
Uh-huh.
they tell you all of his stories of where he went and all he did. And you ask him what happened to him at the end of his life. He say he went back to his country and was crucified. Because Sri Isa is Jeshua.
Okay.
Here's another cool story. My last memory of Jeshua was actually after the crucifixion, and I fell
Mm-hmm.
on my face in front of him, and I looked up and he was laughing at me, so that's my last memory of him. So
Yeah.
I don't know what happened after that, but
Right.
the
Right.
same people in India believe that he
He
came
came back.
back to India with his wife and had children and died there.
Okay. Did he
So
ever get to the Native American land?
I don't believe so. I don't
No.
believe so.
Okay. Because
In,
they have Yeshua with a
yeah,
Yesa.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And there's a and I like you said the fact that you said that. I say Jeshua with a J,
Yeah.
but in the regression it was a pronunciation was a little different. It was a Y and a J mix, more of a Jeshua,
Oh,
Jeshua.
okay.
But in writing it's a Y, so
Uh-huh.
people say Yeshua, right?
Okay.
So you'll hear me. I soften the J a little bit,
A little bit.
but everybody hears the J, and I get that question a lot.
I bet you do. Well, thank you for answering it.
So
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Pierrette is very, very psychic. She's got so many beautiful, redeeming qualities of a person who is loving and kind. And she said she was told that she was at the Last Supper. Can this be real?
Of course, it can be real. The question is, when you were told, how did it feel? Did it feel real?
Did it feel real?
Because it really
Okay.
comes down to when that first person told me, I was like, yeah, I did that. I
Hmm.
felt it to be true. So if you feel
Hmm.
it to be true, why wouldn't it be, or why couldn't it be? Um,
Okay. Because they want to be like you, John, and they want to keep saying no, doubting Thomas. And isn't it true that we all like to have validation? I mean,
Absolutely, we
we
like,
think we
and
wonder if it really, yeah, are we really hearing this? Are we
and
really
I am the
feeling it?
worst one because I was trying to
Oh,
validate everything all the time,
okay. Yeah.
and it really comes down to, if it feels right to you, follow it. If it
There it
doesn't
is,
feel right
Spirit.
to you, don't follow it.
Yep. It did feel real to you, so hence it was real, honey.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow.
We all have discernment, and that's
We do have
one of
discernment.
the gifts that we have is discernment comes from the feeling of it being real or not.
Yeah. Faye says, "Why do I get extremely upset when people say Mary Magdalene was a prostitute?"
Because it wasn't true. It absolutely was not true, and they know that historically that it's not true, because the
Hmm.
story of the prostitute, first of all, it was a story that was told after the Nicene Council. You don't find it before the Nicene Council, and the
Hmm.
story was about an unnamed prostitute. But the
Okay.
person you can blame, honest to goodness, the person you can blame is a guy named Paul, because Paul, being a Pharisee, believed that holy men should never be involved with women. And
Okay.
so Jeshua could not have a wife, could not have kids, could not be involved with somebody. And the one person who was close to Jeshua had to be demonized. So
Sure.
they made her the prostitute.
Oh, like they always demonize the wife, you
Yep.
know?
And even
Yeah.
you go back to the story of Adam and Eve again.
Uh-huh.
His first wife was named Lilith,
Right.
and and
Absolutely.
and
She fell from grace. Yeah.
and the reason she fell from grace is because she was independently minded
That's
and
right.
she had her own thing. And then so they made Eve from Adam's ribs so that Eve would be ever subjugated to the man.
Yeah.
So that is the religious
So
story.
Lilith was never made from his rib. Lilith
Nope.
was just
Lilith
okay.
was made from clay just like he was
Okay.
in the
Okay.
mythology,
Oh
right?
my God! And then if you read Gilgamesh, that's what Humbaba was made from clay. Yeah.
Yeah.
See how all these myths come
Well,
into play.
and you think
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
virgin birth,
Yes. Meant she didn't. She wasn't a married woman,
right?
right?
Well, the story of the virgin birth is interesting. Do you know Plato was a virgin birth? Do you know
No.
that there are Horus was a virgin birth? There are
Oh.
story after story of virgin births in pagan mythology.
Okay. Okay.
When Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the biblical scholars believe they all came from one singular source,
Hmm.
and that source is tied into Greek paganism.
Hmm.
And so to tell the story of him being born of a virgin is absolutely a pagan belief.
Hmm.
You know, when I met him, Joseph was already dead. His name was Jeshua bin Joseph, bin meaning son of Joseph.
Hmm.
We knew Joseph was his father. We didn't. There was no thought of him being of a virgin
Right.
birth. And
Hmm.
so, to me, that it's all sort of that marketing of this Messiah, and in
That's what it comes
reality,
down to. Yeah.
Jeshua's story is a much better story than a messianic one.
Sure.
He's saying, "Look, take heart. I have overcome the world. I'm
That's
showing
right.
you what you can do."
Uh-huh.
Right? And
Yes. Absolutely. So I'm going to put up Sally's question, and actually, I'm just going to say that a lot of people, I have many questions. What do I do on my path? Where am I? Where am I going to go? And that's kind of what Sally's asking. And I'm saying, let's ask it collectively in that way that, John can sort of look inside because we don't have time right now to do all the separate ones. But
right.
what can we all do uh, to, um, to stay on our path, to work on our path? What would Yeshua say?
Jeshua would say, "You are the path. Where you place your foot is where the path is being formed." And so it's a
Okay.
matter of you coming to this space. One of the memories from one of my regressions was when you seek a path is laid before you, but until you turn the path back to yourself, you never find the doorway. And
That's right.
so when you're thinking I have a path ahead of me, you're not being present. You're focusing on what's ahead of you. And then when you think of that, are you thinking of I am lacking my path or I am choosing my path? And
Mhm.
so when I go, you know, when I say I am, whatever I put behind that is what I'm
Is the
creating.
truth. That's right.
I am seeking a path, or
Right.
what is my path? I mean, even what is my path is the present moment belief you don't know. I am receiving all the information I need is a very different
Uh-huh.
feeling.
Yeah. It's staying consistent in the belief that You are the only one that knows,
Yeah.
and you are the only one that can make that determination. I love this. I bought this at the store. You are enough.
You are enough. Look
And,
at that.
and
Nice.
and I tell people that all the time because I really do believe that we are here for a reason, that whatever it is that we are doing currently is our path. And if we get interested in something else, then maybe that's our path. And we
Yeah.
don't have to have all the information. We just need
Right.
to enjoy the journey.
Right. The future is a giant, infinite chalkboard. And we write
Hmm.
on that chalkboard with chalk. And what is chalk? It's dust. It's an impermanent thing that we can erase or we can write with. And so
Uh-huh.
our path is forever in motion and moving. And what's behind us is a collection of present moment memories. But what's ahead of us is infinite possibilities.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, I don't know that I already know that I didn't think I'd be here doing this on my path, and I'm pretty sure you felt the same way. And yet here we are. But that doesn't mean we aren't still on the path and learning more and more as we go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
fabulous. What a great chat. Thank you so much, John.
Oh,
I've just
thank you. It
enjoyed
was
this.
lovely being here with you and your wonderful people.
Yes. I thank all of my wonderful people and some of your people that came over as well. And thank you for the donation, Chitra. That's very nice of you. And thank you to all of my subscribers and all those who are visiting today. And make sure you go over and John has his two channels, John of New, and the other one is Recovering Catholic.
The recovering
The,
Catholic.
the Recovering
The
Catholic.
recovering Catholic. Yeah.
Okay. Very
Because
good.
I'm just that way. No, I'm kidding.
You're just okay. It's all good. Oh my God. Thank you so much to another theater person as well.
Yeah,
That's so
it was
wonderful.
it
Yeah,
was wonderful. Yeah, thank
it
you.
was. Thanks everybody. We'll see you another time. Bye bye.
Bye.